let me put a disclaimer first with this Medicare for All stuff. I am not one who buys into this nonsense about, well, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Well, we pay for plenty of wars in countries. We pay for many bombs and missiles to bomb many countries around the world, the Middle East, killing brown people, children, women. So we never worry about how we're going to pay for that. We never worry about how we're going to pay for the subsidies to Goldman Sachs, the subsidies to Wells Fargo, the subsidies to Pfizer, the subsidies to Raytheon. Never worried. So this whole psychology and mentality coming from the corporate super PAC that is the corporate media, because CNN, MSNBC, all these outlets, nothing but a super PAC. Nothing but a super PAC for the elites and the bourgeoisie. So they only care. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the great congresswoman from New York, said this in a recent CNN interview. We only ask how we're going to pay for the moral thing, the right thing. We never worry about how we're going to pay for war, subsidies for greedy, toxic companies. We never ask how we're going to pay for these fossil fuel subsidies and all of the goodies, the deregulation, the tax cuts for the rich. Never a concern. It's only how we're going to pay for health care. How are we going to pay for education? So I'm not really one that even buys into this pay for discussion. I also believe in modern monetary theory. I've done interviews with people on modern monetary theory. I wish it would go mainstream because we're already printing the money for these wars. We're already printing the money for all of this. And I just watched a documentary actually on the plane ride home. The Panama Papers documentary, which was amazing. You should watch that, the Panama Papers documentary. And let me tell you something. We never wonder how you're going to pay for it. How about you bring back the trillions of dollars that our government and the mafia system that we have in this country and around the world, that our government has allowed these wealthy, greedy degenerates to stash overseas. Because there's tens or hundreds of trillions of dollars stashed overseas. So plenty of money to pay for it. So with the disclaimer that I don't buy into this discussion of how you're going to pay for it, the media is jumping on this. We all know Bernie Sanders from the beginning has said, listen, your taxes are going to go up like in other developed countries, X%. That is the pay for. In addition to taxing wealthy corporations, banks, all that. As a citizen, for the right of health care, you pay for it in taxes, but you save so much in totality. So these terms, taxes, premiums, copays, deductibles, it is a red herring. Taxes are not the important thing. The overall money that leaves your family or your pocket is the important thing. So Bernie says it's basically a tax cut. He should talk about it like that because you're going to save so much money from getting rid of all these premiums, this and that. Elizabeth Warren, because she's never had the courage of her convictions on Medicare for All, cannot just simply say, yes, taxes will go up a little bit, but overall costs will go down, because she has consultants in her ear telling her not to say that, right? She's trying to be everything to everyone, and she's trying to appease Hillary Clinton voters and the neoliberal establishment, and also try to play capital P progressive and pick off more of Bernie Sanders supporters. And when you try to be when you try to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to nobody. Okay? So she was rightly, finally challenged for once during these debates and in coverage after on, well, how are you going to pay for it? Even though, again, I don't buy into this argument. But in fairness, if Bernie's going to be honest and say taxes are going to go up a little bit, but overall costs will go down, why can't Elizabeth Warren do that? Unless she truly doesn't genuinely have the courage of her convictions. Because if you have the courage of your convictions, you just say, yes, taxes will go up a little bit. Your costs will go down significantly more than that modest tax increase. So overall, you're ahead, right? So she had all these people put together this cockamamie tax plan from her. And honestly, I think it's made intentionally pie in the sky so that it's basically an opening bargaining position. It doesn't come across to me that it's meant to even be a concrete plan. So this is the I have a plan for everything candidate who's the plan for the number one voting issue healthcare, many polls show that's the number one issue, is fantasy. And again, I have always gone after corporate media for calling Bernie Sanders pie in the sky, because Bernie Sanders, all of his plans have been laid out. And they're not radical. They're basically carrying the torch from FDR that maybe JFK wanted to carry before he was killed. And frankly, nobody since has really carried. So, but Elizabeth Warren's Medicare for All plan goes under the assumption that she is the most skilled politician of all time. Somehow she's going to, quote, pay for it. Again, we already have the money to pay for it, but let's say you buy into this argument that there has to be an idea to pay for it. Elizabeth Warren is going to pay for this by cutting the military budget. Mind you, she voted for 2 of Trump's massive military budget increases, but she's going to pay for it by cutting the military budget. You with me? She's going to pay for it from comprehensive immigration reform. So these are 2 things that nobody's been able to do pretty much ever. Elizabeth Warren, just going to happen because she has a plan for it, right? She's going to do capital gains taxes to pay for it, double her wealth tax, stronger tax enforcement, whatever that means. I don't really understand what that means. Closing loopholes, this and that. So, there's people, even in my life, they might be watching who I love, who say, I love, she's specific, she's very educated, this and that. You're being taken by a ride here. Anybody could write down anything on a piece of white paper. But how is Elizabeth Warren going to get comprehensive immigration reform, cutting the military budget, capital gains taxes, closing tax loopholes, all this stuff done? How is she going to get all that done? Even if you had a Democratic House and Senate, you think the Democratic Party is going to be like, yes, we surrender. We don't want Raytheon and Goldman Sachs to give us money anymore. So we'll cut the military down to $400 million from $750 billion. 750 billion to 450 billion. Yes, immigration reform, part the seas. Because you're going to need some Republican votes for that, but Elizabeth Warren's got a plan for it. Elizabeth Warren's got a plan for it. So if she says she has a plan for it, then it's going to happen. She's saying she's part of the way she's going to pay for this is a $9,500 head tax or employer tax, which is essentially a head tax on employers. And it doesn't matter if you have 200 or 3. If you're Amazon, $9,500 per employee to go paid to government for Medicare. And if you're for Amazon versus a company with 52 employees, that same $9,500 you're going to pay. So it's essentially a flat tax for employers, is my understanding of it, where an Amazon would pay the same as like a company with 52 employees. She says 50,000 companies with 50 or less employees will be exempt. Well, common sense would dictate if you're going to charge companies with 52 employers, smaller companies, a $9,500 per employee tax that they pay to go to the government for healthcare, for Medicare for all, they're just going to make less employees full-time, make more contract positions, make more part-time positions, or more freelance positions without healthcare. I mean, this is what companies are already doing. If you've looked for a job since the global financial crash 11 years ago, I know in my industry, in media, way more freelance positions without healthcare than possible. It's a flat tax. That's what it is. As opposed to Bernie is talking about a payroll tax that, yes, employees, you pay a certain percentage of how much you make. So obviously, companies would pay more for employees making more, or employees making more would pay more out of their paycheck. I meant employees. But basically, Elizabeth Warren is twisting herself into a pretzel, all to pretend that Middle class people will not see a tax increase. Okay, so first of all, her plan doesn't make sense. It says it's worth 20 trillion, which most experts say is wildly understating it. But okay, even if you could technically, to the letter of the laws, assume all these things are going to happen: comprehensive immigration reform, defense budget cuts, capital gains increases, closing tax hole loopholes, doubling your wealth tax. Then how do you account for, if you're going to charge these employers almost 10 grand an employee, that's going to depress that? I actually, when conservatives say if you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it's going to decrease, employers will lay people off or not hire. That's BS, because more employees will have money in their pocket. But if you charge employers almost $10,000 per head to go to the government to pay for Medicare for All, a flat tax on employers, an employer as big as Amazon gets charged the same per employee as a company making like 52 or 53. The problem with that, they're not gonna hire people full time. They're gonna hire more contractors. So yeah, maybe Americans would have health care, but they're not gonna be able to find full-time work and full-time hours. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com, where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.